You guys, it's almost time for the most wonderful day of the year, the trade deadline.
Yes.
We're about 6 weeks away from one of the most important days in any MLB regular season. Teams decide their identity at the trade deadline. Teams are going to mortgage their future for an attempt to win it all this year, sometimes with players that won't even be around by the next season. Sometimes everything goes according to plan, and sometimes it doesn't. Let's take a look at the best examples of the latter occurring. Back in 2017, the Houston Astros were finally seeing the culmination of their years of losing and rebuilding taking form. The team was well beyond 30 games over 500 in late July, and having built a seismic lead in the American League West Division, the Astros looked to push the envelope and add as many weapons as they possibly could. Houston, who would finish with 101 wins on the year, didn't exactly have an Achilles heel on their roster, but if they had something close to it, I guess you could say it was their bullpen. With lackluster performances from their middle relief core, Houston found some insurance with a veteran lefty. Thousands of miles up north, the Toronto Blue Jays were in the opposite scenario. Their window of contending was closed after back-to-back ALCS appearances. A weak rotation, the decline of Jose Bautista, and the departure of Edwin Encarnacion had put Toronto in last place come that year's deadline. Remarkably, the team didn't sell a ton of their pieces, with years of control left on several players that gave hope to the 2018 season. Let me just quickly throw on my reading glasses that give me 2020 hindsight vision. Yeah, they should have sold. One piece that was placed on the block was starting pitcher Francisco Liriano, who was tumbling through a career-worst season in the final year of his 3-year, $39 million contract originally signed with the Pittsburgh Pirates. In their only major trade at that year's deadline, Toronto sent their veteran southpaw to Houston. The Astros used Liriano primarily out of the bullpen with their rotation shored up, and he performed fine. Including the playoffs, he made 25 appearances for Houston at a league average ERA+, and then departed from the team after the season. Houston ended up winning the World Series, so all's well that ends well, but in my opinion, they could have managed that victory without this trade. And this transaction is evidence to the claim that sometimes the best move you can make is not making a move at all. In the original deal, Houston sent away their struggling corner outfielder Nori Aoki, who only played about a dozen games in Toronto. The real prize here was Houston's number 7 prospect, Teoscar Hernandez, who ranked just outside of the top 100 in all of baseball. The Astros had a logjam of talented outfielders under control both at the big league level and in the minors between George Springer and Josh Reddick, as well as their number 2 prospect Kyle Tucker, number 8 Ramon Liriano, and number 14 Yordan Alvarez. This was easily the deepest area on their depth chart, so dealing from there makes perfect sense, but it's hard not to view it as an overpay considering the struggles and age of Francisco Liriano in 2017. Teoscar Hernandez finally got a shot at everyday playing time on the Blue Jays and really hit his stride. Funnily enough, in his time with Houston, he actually hit his first career home run off none other than Francisco Liriano with the Blue Jays.
How can you not be romantic about baseball?
In his 5 seasons with the club, Teoscar smacked over 120 home runs with a 122 OPS+, both marks just a shade outside the franchise's all-time top 10. He became a pillar in a potent offense, the first true beacon of a new era in Toronto baseball that would fully be ushered in by the 2020s. The exchange of wins above replacement on this one is not pretty, with Liriano giving Houston negative value in his short tenure, while Teoscar was worth over 10 wins as a Blue Jay. That is easily one of the worst rental trades in recent memory, but it's not the most confusing in my opinion. This next one is. This is also one of the more recent transactions on our list, going back only a few years to the 2021 trade deadline. After an admittedly fun start to the season where the Washington Nationals held a winning record at the end of 3 months, the DC-based franchise lost 10 of 12 games to open the month of July, solidifying their status for the season as sellers. What gets lost in the story of the 2021 Nationals is the fact that Kyle Schwarber was absolutely amazing for them before he got traded.
Remember, this is a good team.
They weren't a good team.
You guys stay with us now, right?
We didn't stick with them. 2 years removed from a World Series victory, the Nationals were closing the door on the 2010s. Besides Ryan Zimmerman, Juan Soto, and Steven Strasburg, all bets were off. The team sold their entire core at the deadline, including Trey Turner, Max Scherzer, Kyle Schwarber, and others, to completely restock their farm system and kick off a much-needed rebuild. But while those swaps grabbed the headlines, their best move was the one that fell under the radar. Now, I watch a lot of baseball, guys, hence the existence of this channel, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I have like zero recollection of John Lester ever wearing wearing a Nationals uniform. The veteran ace was struggling in his age 37 campaign in what would become his final season in an illustrious 16-year career. Aside from reaching the 200-win plateau, his performance in 2021 was nothing much to write home about. Looking back, it's hard to believe there was even a suitor in the first place for Jon Lester, let alone one willing to trade something worthwhile to get him at this stage of his career. But the Nationals found a desirable partner in the contending St. Louis Cardinals. Going back to the end of May that season, the Cardinals have been fighting to stay at 500 for 2 months, never exceeding 3 games over or under the 500 benchmark. Reeling from injuries to both Jack Flaherty and Miles Mikolas, in addition to the vast underperformance of Carlos Martinez, the Cardinals were desperate for innings out of their starting rotation. Their answer was 2 veteran starters at the deadline, both of whom would be pitching in their final season of their career. Yeah, you heard that right. Getting old dudes to fill out the rotation has been a thing in Cardinal land for like 3 years now. They nabbed J.A. Happ from the Minnesota Twins and grabbed Jon Lester from the aforementioned Washington Nationals. The latter southpaw pitched better in a Cardinals uniform, but was still performing at a below-league average rate, with most of his value he provided being the 66 innings that he ate up. What's mind-boggling to me is the fact that in this deal for a rental starting pitcher in his final season, the Cardinals decided to give up an everyday outfielder in Lane Thomas, who was once a top 10 prospect in their system not long before this transaction. I believe most of the motivation behind this trade was the belief that Dylan Carlson was going to take Lane Thomas's spot and pan out into a cornerstone piece of the franchise, which he simply hasn't. Meanwhile, Thomas has been one of the most exciting young players to watch on a Nationals team that's been pretty dreary the past few years. He's hit over 50 home runs with Washington and even registered an impressive 20 home run, 20 stolen base season last year. Though there were murmurs that he probably should have been traded last year to further the rebuild in DC, it doesn't change the fact that he's been fantastic for them. He's been worth 6 wins in his tenure with the club, while Jon Lester provided almost no value in terms of wins above replacement in his 2-month stay with St. Louis. A quick interruption on today's trades video to thank today's sponsor, which is the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now you can bet $5 on their app and win $150 in bonus bets instantly. Listen, a lot of the GMs in this video were not afraid to make bets on their trades. You shouldn't be afraid either. Believe in your sports IQ and download their app right now. If you do, use my promo code OLIVE when you do it, and you can get $150 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet of your own. It's a hell of a way to watch the game from the first pitch to the last pitch. Thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to more rough rental trades. If you judge rental trades based on a team's need for talent and their playoff position, you can absolutely rationalize the following trade as worthwhile. We're going back a full decade and then some to the 2012 trade deadline for this one. Back in the early 2010s, the Los Angeles Angels were viewed very differently than they are now. Having made the playoffs in 5 of their last 7 seasons, the Anaheim-based franchise was viewed as a titan of the American League West, and in 2012, they were in a heated race to reclaim their crown from the defending back-to-back AL champion Texas Rangers. The team was well within striking distance, 10 games over 500 and 3 games back of the division by the end of July. Led by rookie sensation Mike Trout and free agent acquisition Albert Pujols, the offense was the least of their concerns. The depth of their rotation had thinned out considerably, with only Jared Weaver and CJ Wilson being the reliable guys throughout every cycle of the rotation. In desperate need of quality innings in an admittedly thin market, the Angels made a huge splash at that year's deadline, with other American League titans making moves for starters like the Tigers acquiring Anibal Sanchez and the Rangers acquiring Ryan Dempster. The pressure was on the Angels to answer the bell. Now, there was zero shot of them trading their number 1 prospect Mike Trout, but they made their number 2 prospect, infielder Gene Segura, available, and they found a suitor quickly in the Milwaukee Brewers. Just a year before, the Brewers made their own deadline splash to acquire the ace of the Kansas City Royals, Zach Greinke. In that move, they dealt away a prospect haul including Lorenzo Cain and Alcides Escobar, 2 pieces of the eventual championship core in Kansas City. Milwaukee made the championship series in 2011 thanks to their big trade, but in 2012, the team underperformed. Sitting 10 games under 500 and in 4th place in their own division, the front office decided to cut their losses and deal away Zach Greinke, knowing that they had no intention to sign him to a big free agent contract at the end of the season. This one especially hurt general manager Doug Melvin, who adored Zach Greinke and desperately tried to get an extension done to no avail. The swap looked disastrous early on for the Angels, though. Greinke got shelled in his first month in Los Angeles, pitching to an ERA above 6 in his first 5 starts with his new team. However, the ace came up big for them in September, posting a top 5 ERA in the American League for the entire month, alongside all the names you'd expect to be there, and Jeremy Hellickson, remember him? How fun. Baseball's such a weird sport. Despite an 18-9 record in the final month, the Angels couldn't overcome their underperformance from the month prior, falling 4 games short of the wildcard winning Rangers. If the Angels didn't win the division, but the Rangers also didn't win the division, then who did? Oh my god, it was the Oakland A's daycare, just a bunch of rookies going absolutely crazy. In the offseason, the Angels failed to re-sign Greinke, watching him walk to the crosstown rival Dodgers on a record-setting contract for a pitcher. On the other side of the trade, they definitely could have gotten burned a lot worse. Jean Segura obviously panned out into a great big leaguer, stealing just under 100 bases in 4 seasons with Milwaukee and making the All-Star team as a rookie in 2013. He was worth just under 6 wins as a Brewer, though to be honest, his best baseball was played after he left Milwaukee. Plus, the other 2 top 20 prospects dealt by the Angels in Johnny Helweg and Ariel Pena never amounted to much of anything for the Brewers. Overall, in terms of WAR, Zach Greinke was worth 1.5 BWAR in his brief time in Anaheim, but the trade stings due to their missing of the playoffs and failure to bring him back. Speaking of Jean Segura, let's just see what he's up to right now. Looks like he's having fun. Well, we just praised the Milwaukee Brewers, so now we've got to be a little mean to them to keep things balanced. 6 years removed from being one of the centerpiece prospects in a trade that sent David Price from Detroit to Toronto, Daniel Norris's career had not panned out like many had expected it to. Once a top 20 prospect in the sport, the hulking lefty was more known for living out of his RV than any of the pitching he did at the big league level. Constantly moved from a starter to reliever role throughout the years, Norris never found any consistency as a Detroit Tiger and was coming up on his final year before hitting free agency in 2021. Enduring easily his worst season to date, the Tigers, who were well on their way to a 5th consecutive losing season, shopped him and many others at that year's deadline. The Milwaukee Brewers, who had gained a reputation for churning out quality bullpens annually, worked to acquire Norris for a low-level prospect. Perhaps they saw something in his stuff or his fielding independent pitching, but Norris pitched even worse once he arrived in Milwaukee and didn't even make their playoff roster after the club won 95 games and the division. No one thought much of the trade at the time. Hell, I'm sure most people didn't even know that it happened in the first place, with the Cubs core taking most of the spotlight. However, the unranked prospects sent away from Milwaukee to Detroit turned out to be one of the best finds at that year's trading event. Starting pitcher Reese Olson. Pitching to an average ERA with great strikeout potential at the time of the trade, Olson began to climb through the minor leagues once he arrived in Detroit. The Tigers brought him up out of necessity in 2023 after they traded away Michael Lorenzen to the Phillies. After pitching long relief out of the bullpen earlier in the season, Olson began to find his stride as a starter once he was given a permanent spot. His 1.44 ERA in September of last year was 4th best in all of baseball, and funnily enough, only 2nd place on his own team to Tarek Skubal. His batting average against and whip also ranked in the top 3 for this month, alongside Tarek Skubal and the Cy Young winner in both respective leagues. This year, Olson is off to a fantastic start through 2 months of the season as well, leading a fearsome Tigers rotation alongside Skubal and Jack Flaherty. So far, the damage in terms of wins above replacement is pretty significant, standing at a 3-win swing per the recording of this video. But with Reese Olson not hitting free agency until at least the 2030 season, this trade has a chance to be looked back on as one of the most lopsided deadline swaps for a rental player in recent memory. And that's my list for the worst rental trades in recent MLB history. If I missed one that you thought of, leave a comment down below and maybe we'll make a part 2 to this one. If you want something positive instead, maybe we'll do the best rental trades in recent MLB history for my next video. But that'll do it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time.